welcome you all to the House of Peace Cemetery, located on Whaley Street. I want to thank you for coming out today on this beautiful, I can't say crisp, but warm January afternoon to be with us as we unveil this historical marker. It is my honor as the president of the Beth Shalom Synagogue to thank the Historical Columbia, the Columbia Jewish Heritage Initiative, and the Jewish Historical Society of South Carolina for acknowledging the historical value of this site to place a lasting and permanent marker here. I'd also like to thank these organizations for also placing a historical marker at the site of the Beth Shalom Synagogue on Marion Street. Both of these sites hold deep meaning to me personally. My grandparents, who came to the United States in the mid-20s to make Columbia their home and Beth Shalom their spiritual home, are laid to their eternal rest at this site, right off the sidewalk. I was one of the very last to have a bat mitzvah at the Marion Street Synagogue in 1971 before it was moved to its current location. I have vivid memories of the Marion Street Synagogue, of climbing the tall steps outside to get to the shul and being awed by the holiness of the sanctuary. And we are very lucky that we have the original ark and the pews from that synagogue in our own small chapel today. But today you will learn more about the history of this cemetery from the following speakers, and I encourage you all to stay for the tour of the cemetery to learn more about our founding fathers and how this sacred place was one of the earliest free Hebrew burials in America. It's a site to be honored and revered. Thank you.
I would really like to begin with a quote from Thomas Jefferson, and I quote, "Let us save what remains, not by vaults and locks which fence them from the public eyes, and use in consigning them to the waste of time, but by such a multiplication of copies as shall place them beyond the reach of accident." And I would add to the quote, by the placement of historical markers. Welcome to the dedication of the Whaley Street marker, part of the Beth Shalom Jewish Cemetery. My name is Lily Filler, I know most of you, and I am a member also of the synagogue. I am also fortunate to be on the board of the Jewish Historical Society of South Carolina and on the steering committee of the Columbia Jewish Heritage Initiative of Historic Columbia. I would like to recognize Robin Waits, the Executive Director of Historic Columbia, and if there she is, and Gary Baum, a member of the Historical Society board with me, and he's over here. With their missions and goals aligning in many areas, these two dedicated organizations have collaborated to bring historical markers to significant Jewish sites here in our city. The recognition of the past is critical at all times, but more so now as the citizenry shows very much skepticism and the revisionists celebrate by writing new history. That's my quote. Many of us, longtime Columbian residents, do not know, so therefore cannot appreciate the richness of our heritage here in South Carolina. In 1994, under the vision and leadership of Senator Isidore Lurie of blessed memory, the Jewish Historical Society of South Carolina was born. The purpose was to help in the collection, in the study, and in the interpretation of South Carolina Jewish history, and increase awareness of that heritage among Jews and non-Jews alike. The Society meets twice yearly in cities and towns across South Carolina, once in the spring and once in the fall. When we gather in the small towns or larger cities, the missions remain the same. Highlight the Jewish history from early beginnings to the present, recognize the early settlers and their hardships, as well as their magnificent accomplishments. We just had a wonderful fall meeting in Greenville, South Carolina, hearing about the influence and the vision of Mayor Max Heller. Under the leadership of the 2006 President Belinda Gergel, who was a Columbia resident and is now residing in Charleston, and in collaboration with local entities, the Jewish Historical Society began the marker program. We help logistically and financially in bringing commemorative historical markers to the South Carolina community. We have placed markers in Sumter, Anderson, Greenville, Aiken, and Orangeburg, and have placement pending in Florence, Walterboro, and Somerville. With Historic Columbia, we will have placed 3 such markers here in Columbia. One was placed on December 11th at the Woodrow Street Tree of Life. Today we are here at Whaley Street, and one is to come at the site of the Marion Street House of Peace Synagogue, who we all remember very well. I will also point out that during the centennial celebration of Beth Shalom in 2005, a Beth Shalom marker was placed on the site of the first Jewish Sunday school across from the Richland County Public Library on Assembly Street. And that was thank you to Belinda Gergel, who helped us do that. The Jewish Historical Society's major research initiatives have been developed under the auspices of the Jewish Heritage Collection, housed in special collections of the College of Charleston's Marlene and Nathan Addlestone Library. To date, more than 400 oral histories have been recorded, and additionally, the staff has compiled an extensive manuscript of families, businesses, synagogues, and Jewish organizations. The Historical Society will be meeting in Charleston and in Somerville this spring, examining the Jewish-owned businesses in both places. Please try to make it a point to join us May 20th and 21st in Charleston. The Columbia Jewish Heritage Initiative of Historic Columbia started in 2014 and works very closely with the Jewish Historical Society. The initiative has conducted extensive research on many of Columbia's Jewish families and recorded 29 history interviews here in our city over the past 2 years. The Historic Columbia and the initiative have developed and presented 3 guided tours of Jewish sites in the commercial district and developed a print brochure and web-based tour that highlights 34 historic sites here in Columbia. And the print brochures are here on the table, and it will guide you to where the online web-based tour is if you're interested. They have also developed a traveling trunk on World War II history that incorporates the Holocaust and has been delivered to over 700 students in Richland's school districts 1 and 2. In addition, key relationships with organizations including the College of Charleston, Richland County Public Library, Columbia Jewish Federation, and the Columbia Jewish Community Center have led to further connections and opening doors for the initiative. Working with the Jewish Film Festival to present a film and talk back on the real threat of anti-Semitism, working with Columbia, South Carolina 63 and the Nickelodeon to present the film and talk back session on the documentary Rosenwald, working with the Columbia Jewish Historical Society for the November 2015 fall meeting that we had last year in Columbia, and working with the Columbia Holocaust Education Commission back in March for a public program that we had at the South Carolina State Museum confronting the Holocaust, where we had a standing room only crowd. Looking forward to the future, we will be having the dedication of the Marion Street Synagogue plaque and extending programs with the Jewish Film Festival, Columbia Holocaust Education Commission, and the Jewish Historical Society. So on behalf of all of these organizations, we are proud to lead the effort to celebrate, highlight, and raise awareness for the Jewish heritage here in South Carolina, especially Columbia. Thank you all for coming.
It's my pleasure to say a couple of prayers at the dedication of this marker that we're about to unveil, and at the same time make 2 comments from a religious point of view about why we're here. One of them is that please don't forget me. I think that's a cry that all of us have from deep down in our soul, that we should not be forgotten through the passage of time, that somebody should remember our name, somebody should remember the things that we've done, the acts that we've created and crafted in our life, the goodness that we've given birth to. And so part of reckoning and blessing this moment is a recognition of all of the good people who nurtured and founded this community. And to that end, I'd like to share with you what we call this place. Yes, we call it the Whaley Street Cemetery. But in Hebrew, we call it a Beit Chaim, a house of life, which is an odd name for a cemetery, but the reason traditionally we refer to it as that is because this speaks life. The tales that need to be unwound and told are necessary. And we, the living, it falls to our shoulders to do so, and to do so with pride and joy. And secondly, and finally, this place is a holy place. In Hebrew, again, we have a term for this, we call it Makom Kadosh. We call this a holy spot because of what all the people did, how they lived their lives, and every person is endowed with the kernel of the divine. So with both of those things in mind, please allow me to share prayers. The first, our God and God of all generations, author of all life. Our lives are in your hand, and we, but sojourners upon the earth. We recognize that the same fate awaits us all, whether we are simple or wise, rich or poor, great or small. Death levels all distinctions. We are all equal in death. The memories of those who are gone from us should stir us to better living, kind words, just and noble deeds, lofty ideals, so that when the time comes that others will remember us, we will have left the world better than we found it. Thus shall life become a song to immortality, and thus shall life be a master over death. Traditionally, there is a memorial prayer that is sung whenever we remember our dead. If you'll permit me. El Molei Rachamim Shochein B'Meromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah B'Malot Kedoshim Utorim Kazara Ki Amazirim Et Kol Nishmot Sheizkarnu Hayom Began Eidei Menuchatam Ana Bala Rachamim Ashtirein B'Seter Kenafech L'Olamim Utzror B'Tzror Chaim Et Nishmotehem Adonai Nachlatam V'Yanuchu B'Shalom Al Mishkavo Tehem B'Nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, we ask that you grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and among the pure, to the souls of all of those who lie here and have gone to their eternal home. Master, we ask that they find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. As we dedicate this memorial plaque today, we recall the prayer of Rabbi Morris Adler, Zichrono Livracha, of blessed memory, who said, "We thank thee, O God of life and love, for the resurrecting gift of memory, which endows thy children fashioned in thine image with the godlike sovereign power to give immortality through love. Blessed be thou, O God, who enables thy children to remember."
It's nice to be with you today. I'm Aaron Small, member of Beth Shalom Synagogue. Of course, a cemetery, the final resting place, can be compared to a museum. It offers a lot of history and the value of belief of a particular community and the people who live there. Columbia was chartered in 1786, and some of the early landowners were Jewish. And as you walk through the cemetery, you'll see their names today: Cohen, Solomon, and Levi. By the year 1820, the Jewish population in the Midlands was large enough to justify a cemetery. In 1840, the Hebrew Benevolent Society was created to ensure a place for Jewish burial. The Hebrew Benevolent Cemetery exists today. At the time, the Jewish community did not have a permanent rabbi, and the synagogue until 1865. And when Sherman came through, he destroyed the synagogue by fire. And they lost most of the records that was from the year 1834 to 1884. But it was not until 1900 that the Jewish community could rebuild a house of worship. And in 1903, a new congregation was organized, and it was the Tree of Life. And it was a Reformed congregation. And it was only a short time that between the liberal and the Orthodox, there were some problems. So the congregation formed the House of Peace Synagogue. And they built it on Whaley Street in 1905. And they moved it to Marion Street in 1935. And it was there until 1971, until the new synagogue was built on Trentham Road. Rabbi David Carey started serving the community in 1908. He was the first official rabbi for our congregation, and he served it for 50 years. And during the Depression, the dues for the synagogue was $2.50. By March 12, 1883, the Hebrew Cemetery Society purchased this land on Whaley Street, and they purchased the property for $255. The House of Peace acquired the land from the Hebrew Benevolent Cemetery. If one wishes to understand the heart of the Jewish community, what better place to begin than the House of Peace Cemetery, where our loved ones are interred. And as we walk through the cemetery, I will bring you up on some additional information. Why the cemetery is as small as it is, and why and what happened. Dr. Lee.
There is a blessing for every new occasion that we experience in life, which is basically, thank God that we have been given life to experience this moment. For those of you who know the blessing, you're welcome to recite it together with us. For those of you who don't, an amen will suffice. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechiyanu, v'kiyamanu, v'higiyanu, lazman hazeh.